Are you a farmer? Then this is for you. Meet the Farmers Virtual Summit taking place from the 25th to the 27th of August 2020. Available on your smartphone, tablet, or computer. Meet the Farmers is a virtual summit and business matchmaking agriculture event where farmers meet their suppliers and buyers. So this is how it works. During the summit, crucial matters affecting our agricultural sector will be discussed in partnership with GRZ and key stakeholders during the plenary and parallel sessions. During the business matchmaking, the event brings farmers from all over the country to meet their suppliers and buyers. Meanwhile, the suppliers and buyers will set up their profiles online to showcase products and services they supply or buy. The farmers are then linked to their suppliers and buyers based on what they farm. They meet online using video link on a one-to-one and one-to-many basis. Register for free now to secure your place on www.meetthefarmerszm.org.
What begins to happen is that they continue having challenges in terms of revenue, and we see it a lot, that then her children will continue to suffer, they will stop going to school, and the last factor that comes into that is that they will follow up on the same cycle of poverty that she is in. Therefore, we don't expect the nation to actually go out of the limbo that it's been in for quite a long time. And as MCCA, then the critical problems that I just mentioned to you right now are all listed right here. You have here farmers being having challenges, access to inputs, price expectations. For the agro dealers themselves, they also experience a challenge where they are erratically restocked by the major suppliers. And the farmers, one of the things that that's clearly see for all of them is that it's just too far for them to be able to actually buy these agricultural inputs. 90% of the agricultural suppliers, amazing manufacturers of agricultural inputs, are based here in Lusaka, making it very difficult for farmers and agro dealers across the country to access these agricultural inputs and good technical information. Lastly, obviously, most of us know that on the side of farming advisory services, the nation has boasts from the government about 743 to 750 agricultural extension officers who are on the ground out in rural areas. And the interesting thing is that versus 1.6 million farmers who are out there means that we have a ratio of 1 to 2,000 farmers for each extension officer. How many of them with the challenge of COVID, social distancing rules that are there right now, challenges obviously of the extension officer not having enough fuel or talk time to be able to call the farmers, that is going to pose a huge challenge for him to be able to actually talk to the farmers and assist them in the right way. Therefore, again, the problem comes back. So our business model as MCCA is quite straightforward. And in simple case, what is there is that a farmer simply communicates with MCCA either using our e-commerce website, which is mcca.com, or our call center using our phone lines, and they are able to send us a list of all the products they're looking for. We give them back a price list, and they make payment. We communicate with the suppliers. We have not less than about 15 suppliers who will be able to see a little bit later, and the products are delivered off to the customer. This allows them to browse from suppliers, a majority of them from one place, do price comparisons, and make purchases. And this is done in a trusted way. So on the side of farming advisory, same case, a farmer or agro dealer goes through our training platform, which is called apunzile.com. We'll be fully launching it out probably by the beginning of 1st September. Please look out for that. And our Zoom trainings, we have not less than 600 to 700 people who have actually come through for these trainings online. And it's quite interesting because people are coming in from even rural areas where someone would have wondered whether network even exists in such areas. And these trainings are being done by experts, people from the industry who are well vested with this knowledge. And I'll be able to also bring in the people who are actually training these things. Now, the impact, you see, because MCCA is a for-profit company with a social impact in mind, and we are clearly interested in seeing to it All right. So the great thing is that with the whole activity, we have a situation where our impact is targeted towards, you know, about 32.5 million farmers in Southern Africa, which is in the SADC space, 1.6 million in Zambia, and 2,000 to be specific for Zambia. That is our initial target right now. And then on the agro-dealer side, we're targeting about 450 for now. And lastly, from the side of suppliers, about 60 or so who are targeted. But in all this, our target for farming advisory, which is the number of farmers we want to train in what is called farming as a business, is about 16,000 farmers. And you would clearly know right now that I'm talking about 1% of the number of farmers in the country. Our mind is telling us to say that if at all we can at least reach 1% with the knowledge that the experts have on how to farm as a business, we will be able to change the landscape of the farmers. I'll give you an analogy at the end of why we feel that the idea that farmers must be able to be educated with the right understanding on farming is quite critical. Our impact to date is that firstly, we have got 16 suppliers, which you can find on our website. We have serviced more than 2,000 farmers today via e-commerce, which is buying agricultural inputs and delivering them to wherever they are. We have close to 700 to 800 farmers registered on our e-learning portal, and we're targeting 16,000 as mentioned by the end of the year. And our partnership so far is that we've got 4 organizations, with majorly one of them with Musika and other partners like Zipos, who are helping us also make sure that we assist the agro dealers on the ground with restocking. And with that, we feel that opens us up to a larger pool of farmers. In this case, not less than 50 to 100,000 to be specific. Now, these are the type of suppliers that we have dealing with crops. And under crops, you're talking about things like maize, legumes, and oil. You're talking about farming products, also things like fertilizers and agrochemicals. And on the other side, the equipment. So this is literally all around whatever a farmer may need for them to actually grow or keep. And with that in mind, I would like to simply say this to all of us, that you see, without a farmer, we say no farmer, no food. And therefore, a farmer who is feeding the nation must also be able to themselves benefit from the action of actually being able to feed the nation. And that is by simply educating them on how they can be able to learn and feed the nation profitably, not just doing it as a hobby. Therefore, for all the trainings that IMSICA offers, we always make sure that there is a concept of finance and accounting in there that teaches them on how to make money from everything. Is it tomato? Is it onions? Is it any kind of crop or animal that you're keeping? How do you work around it? And access for these things, the overall goal, as with our discussion right now, our topic, we are looking at the fact that when a farmer has the right quality of inputs and they have the right advisory, or rather information on how to grow those products, we hope that they will also be able to access finance, and that will allow them to grow as an individual. Because we know commercial farmers, a majority of them are growing because they receive huge support from the banks. Now we know the reason why the small scale farmers and the medium scale farmers do not have equal access. It's not because of segregation. It's because of not having certain things in place. And those are the things that we would like to help the farmers be able to understand. And once that is done, we want to see access to markets, them being able now to actually sell their produce, because it will have the right quality, it will come in the right quantity, and it would also be consistent, because this is what the big markets want. They want high quality products coming in at the right quantity and also being consistent. And we therefore must go back to the value chain. And we feel that IMSICA, with the technology, which is timely in this time of COVID, where people cannot meet physically, where trainings cannot be done physically, where purchases cannot be easily done physically, it comes in to not only save costs, but also keep us safe and healthy in this time. Thank you very much to the Meet the Farmers team, and for IMSICA, for Musika to be specific, who gave us the opportunity to be part of this workshop. Thank you very much. We're waiting for more questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilbert Mwale, for that presentation. we will not take the questions now, but I would want to just quickly encourage those of us that are following us on this live streaming that you can continue to ask your questions to the presenters via the Hoover app, and we will be able to take those questions immediately after the second presentation. So encourage you to keep those comments coming, keep the questions coming, and we should be able to have them addressed after the second presentation. We can go on to the next presentation from Silverlands.
Right, good afternoon, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak. Silverlands Ranching is an integrated farming business situated about 75 kilometers outside Livingstone in southern Zambia. We have a cattle ranch and outgrower business. We have pivot irrigation, which we use to grow silage and cash crops. And we have a cattle feedlot that can handle about 7,000 cattle per annum. And alongside that, we're now establishing a new crop in Zambia, which is pecans. And we to date have established about 130 hectares of pecans on the ranch. Alongside this, Silverlands Ranching has really looked to reach out to the surrounding community and the farmers in those communities and look at improving their livelihoods. And to do this, we created a program called SLIC. SLIC stands for Silverlands Livestock Improvement Community Program. And through this program, we really look at targeting the farmers in the surrounding communities and look at improving their lifestyles through improving cattle and their cropping programs. What we've done with the cattle side is that we actually establish dip stations in the surrounding communities. Currently, we have 32 dip stations running. How that works is we actually get invited by the community to come and re-establish an existing dip station or build a new dip station or spray race. We then work with the community for them to put their own committee together to run the station. And they form a committee of farmers, and they elect a secretary and president or chairman of that committee. And we work with them alongside that. We provide a service weekly for dipping, where we actually provide the chemicals. We send a livestock technician out to the actual dipping site. We mix the chemicals. We get the dipping station set up for the day. And then the community actually run the dip station, we actually do a cost recovery where the community pays per animal dipped. And that covers the cost of the dips and any other chemicals. We also provide a service for castration, dehorning, and vaccinations where required. And we also do training on animal husbandry and improving herd compositions. This in general has led to a significant decrease in the mortality rate in cattle. 80% of your diseases in cattle are tick-borne, and by addressing the tick issue, we actually improve the quality of the herds quite significantly in the communities. This has also led to an improvement in the number of cattle they have available to either keep or sell. And the quality of the animal has actually improved as well, so they're able to sell it to market at higher prices. We also run a program of looking to improve the crops in the surrounding areas. This is done through a program where we have a curriculum that we go through where we teach improved farming techniques, climate smart approaches, how to use minimum till. We're finding in the southern province, most people will have cattle, so they like to plow, but we change the plow tips and we use the minimum till approach. And with that, we also promote the growth of cash crops as to substitute the maize that they're growing, and we're promoting the growth of sorghum crops. And as well as sunflower crops. The sorghum crop is grown actually in a joint venture with Zambian breweries, and that product is then sold to Zambian breweries, and Zambian breweries pay the farmer directly. I think through this program, what we've been able to assess is some of the constraints that that we see the small scale farmers have in the market. And it's been quite interesting to actually have a look at them and identify those constraints and how we can tailor the project to actually overcome those constraints. And I think one of the biggest challenges small scale farmers face is actually the ability to link directly to the consumer of the product. So they may have two cows, but to actually move those to an abattoir is quite difficult. So they end up selling them to an accumulator or an agent, or they might have a couple of 100 kgs or 1,000 kgs of maize or sorghum they need to sell. And it's difficult to get that through to Lusaka, so they're selling it to an agent. And the challenge being is obviously the agent takes quite a big markup in this process. I think another big area where we see constraints to market is a misalignment between the product produced and the market requirement. So you may have farmers having a cow to sell, but it's not in the right condition that the abattoir wants or the consumer wants. And the same thing with crops. They're growing a crop and it's been produced, but they're not always sure what the market actually wants. I think also one of the big things we've seen is that markets change. So demand might change for a product, but that takes quite a couple of seasons sometimes to filter down to the farmer. So they potentially can be growing a product the market doesn't want, or things have changed in the requirement for that product. And I think to sum it up, really, market intelligence is quite often lacking for the small scale farmers out there. They're not getting up-to-date information of what's happening in the market. And I think there's also limited connectivity between the actual farmer and the end user. Most of that information is generally filtered through brokers or agents. And I think if we look at the underlying strategy, generally what's happened in this industry is that the farmer has produced a product and hope to sell it. And he's trying to find a market for it instead of understanding what the market demand is and creating a product that aligns with the market. I think if we move on to the next slide, we've got the challenges identified. And to sum it up, really, I think the distance from market is quite a big challenge for the small scale farmers out there. The connection with buyers is difficult because the buyer quite often sit in Lusaka and they're sitting in a rural area. And what's happening in the market doesn't always filter down quick enough to the farmers. I think it's also difficult for small scale farmers on crop inputs to really know what the actual prices are. They're limited quite often in product availability to a regional supply, and they're not open up quite often to many different suppliers out there. And another big challenge we've actually identified is technical knowledge on the product, both inputs and outputs. Quite often the latest farming methods may not be readily available to the farmers, what the right chemicals to use, when to use them, how to use them. And we've identified all of these as challenges in our program, and we've really aligned our programs to actually meet a number of these challenges, both in the market and in the value chain. I think what we as a business did is we looked to see what would make the biggest impact. And if we look at, for example, cattle, one of the biggest impacts we could do was to reduce the tick-borne diseases in the cattle herd. So that was one of our main focuses initially on the dipping side, was to reduce disease, and by that way improve the health of the cattle and the herd sizes and quality. The other area we identified is most commercial farmers, if you're going to a feedlot, don't want cattle with horns on. So we actually started a program of dehorning cattle, as well as castrating cattle, because that's a requirement for a feedlot. If you're wanting to feed animals through a feedlot system, you'd want that, and we started training that in the program. We've subsequent to that got that stabilized and running well, and now we're actually looking at introducing cattle licks, to improve the nutritional value of cattle, to improve the quality of the cattle, and we're starting with lead farmers to actually introduce that into the program. One of the big key things is if you improving the quality and the quantity of the product out there, it normally comes at a cost to the farmer. And without a guaranteed market or an increase in price for the product, it's not always viable for the farmer. And I think this is one of the key missing elements in many programs out there, is that the product's improved, but there's not a clear linkage to the off-taker at a premium price. And it's one of the things that we've worked on hard as the business, is that we procure cattle for our own feedlot. We buy sunflower seed, and then we act as a aggregator for Zambian breweries, where we actually aggregate sorghum, and we pay the farmers directly for that product. On our cropping program, we're really looking to bring training in, both the technical experience and the experience of when to plant the crop, what crops to plant, how best to plant them, and also to reduce the impact on opening up new land all the time, to plant crops closer together and to rotate crops. We do this through lead farmers, where we actually work with farmers in the communities. And we actually use all the inputs with we work with the lead farmer, only using inputs that he has available. It's important to show the farmers that they can actually do it with the inputs that they have available to them. And part of this program is, as I said, we introduce sorghum and sunflower crops as well. We also look to supply the seed, because it's one of the challenges we see within the small-scale farmers, is that a lack of quality seed out there, and that which leads to low yields. And again, we actually pay the farmer directly. It's a very transparent process. The product's brought to our facilities, where it gets cleaned and weighed in their presence, and they get paid straight away, either for the crop or for the cattle. They actually are able to come and see the cattle being weighed, graded, and then they're paid immediately for that product. I think with working with the small scale farmers and looking at a project with them, I think some of the key takeaways that we've looked at through this program is that it's important to understand what the market wants. Quite often there's a misalignment between the product produced and what the market wants. And that is, you need to get that right. There needs to be a link that whatever you introduce within the small-scale farming community, that the actual market wants it. And you need to develop that product for that market. It's no good having a product and trying to find a market for it, because quite often there isn't a market. What you need to do is understand the market, develop the product, and then the third point is really create those key linkages. Which are missing in quite a lot of projects out there. It's not the key linkage, the commercial linkage. So the product is developed, is improved, but there's no commercial linkage. You can improve the cattle, but if there's no market for that cattle or no link to the market, what benefit is there to the small scale farmer? And that's one of the things that we work on strongly, is creating that link, either on cattle or on commercial crops. And I think once you've done that as a project, you actually can't stop there. You've actually got to go back to the beginning again and start, because markets are always changing. What a feedlot, one abattoir wants this year on his cattle might change to what he wants next year. What Zambian breweries want in their crop this year from sorghum might be different to what they want next year. Or the soya crop, or whatever it is, those products change. And that information needs to be fed back to the farmers, and they need to develop their products on a continuous basis to meet the market demands. Thank you for your time. It was a quick overrun of our business and what we're doing.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Stephen Sprayton, the CEO for the Small Livestock Improvement Community Program under Silverlands. That was very important presentation to us, and thank you once again to those of us that are joining us via Hoover, and we're still waiting for your comments and questions as we continue with this particular workshop. I just noticed Mr. Anayawa Mutemwa is now joined us. You're very welcome, Mr. Mutemwa from the Ministry of Agriculture. Your microphone is muted. Okay, most welcome, Mr. Mutemwa.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Please. So we will continue with our workshop, and Mr. Mtemwa, Mr. Sprighton, and Mr. Mwale will be able to help us with responding to the questions and comments that we will be giving via the Hoover app. I only have a couple of, should I say, questions that have come in so far. Well, I would call them mostly, I think, comments. I think people are having challenges accessing us. But I hope the technical team is able to assist by providing further information on the link. I think the first comment I have is someone is indicating that I'm looking forward to the session. The market access has been a challenge. However, this has been exacerbated by COVID-19. Will you also address the present limitations presented by COVID-19 and future market access models resulting from the impact of COVID? This has been, Yvonne Mwanza is the one that is trying to get our response. So maybe I'll quickly ask Mr. Mwale to respond, and then Stephen and Mr. Mtemwa will come in last.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mwewa, and thank you very much to Yvonne for that critical question. And I would like to mention to say that, you know, it is a work of all of us in the agricultural space to be able to look into efforts of definitely finding out how are we going to be able to cope after the COVID-19, and even within COVID-19, because you know, there is no specific date. Nobody has sent us a message saying it's coming to an end on Tuesday or so. So which means we have to have a mindset to say, in an event where it sticks around, what do we do? In an event where it ends at some point, what are we going to do again? So for a few pointers that I got from what Mr. Sprighton mentioned, which I would like to agree with strongly, is that number one, when you look at businesses for farmers, we need to think of them, first of all, there's a need for a mindset change. So this now more than ever, we need farmers to have a mindset change. That is where things should start from. And the mindset change should be that farming should not be because you are able to, or it's because it's something that you just like doing. It should be something that we should be able to think of as an entrepreneurial activity, something that we know, something that is market driven, in the sense that you have been able to take a step in understanding what your market needs and what your client needs, and then go backwards and go and grow that crop and go and grow those vegetables and go and keep those animals, because you know that there's somewhere where they need them. And in a certain way, you have even locked in certain transactions, already existing contracts that allow you to go and actually be able to sell in those places. That is the first point that I would like to add to mention. The last point I would like to mention is on the future going forward and how do we interact in this space. I think if this is a space where technology comes into play. Right now, we are sitting on this conference, which should have been, to a certain extent, an agricultural show activity physically done out in showgrounds. But we are, I wouldn't call forced, but we are rather opportuned to have this ability to be on this platform where we can access more experts who may not even be available physically had we done this experience physically. So we need to shift our minds and begin to understand that technology has its place in the growth of agriculture going forward. And therefore, now more than ever, as small-scale farmers who can be aggregated, we should begin to think about aggregation of small-scale farmers, produce, and obviously, you know, bulk buying or coming together as groups, either as cooperatives, or you do this as just other forms of groups, or you do it as organizations, outgrower schemes. But those groupings should be able to fit into a process which leads to two options. Number one is either the outward markets or the local markets. Why? Because e-commerce and technology should be able to be the underlying factor that allows these forms of trade. So my thinking is a change of mindset. Technology needs to be embraced, no matter how hard it takes for us to change. But I think it is high time that we accepted these solutions and began to work with them for the betterment of our of ourselves and of the agricultural sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mwale. Mr. Sprayton?
Great, thanks for the good question. I think one of the things to encourage the farmer out there is that even though we're in the midst of a COVID pandemic where there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainty, people still need to eat. And the product will be in demand. There might be some short-term fluctuations in demand for a product, but reality is don't panic in this time, especially as a farmer. Your product will get back and will start selling. We see that in the cattle industry. There was a month or 6 weeks where everyone stopped buying meat, and then after a period of time, people realized even with the potential of this COVID out there, meat was still nice to eat, and you still wanted to eat meat, and people started buying cattle again. And interesting enough, you can see the cattle prices actually gone up since the COVID outbreak started. There's been about a 30% increase in cattle prices, and so don't panic. I think that's the first encouragement. Assess the situation. If demand has dropped off a bit, just wait a bit. Most of that demand will pick up again. But also take the opportunity, as Gilbert has said, through this time is to look at new opportunities out there through either e-commerce, looking to look for new products that you could potentially grow or sell out there. There's a lot of programs out there working with the farmers at the moment and trying to align with some of those where they can maybe align you with the technology in growing the crop, or align you with the market, get a better price and consistent demand. I think, I encourage you, don't panic, but use this time to actually look for opportunities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sprayton. Mr. Mtemwa?
Thank you very much. It is now time for me to present my presentation. I'm looking at improving the market access for the agricultural commodities, looking at the small-scale farmers. If you look at the theme itself, it suggests that we identify the impediments into the markets for agricultural commodities, and then suggest the initiatives or the strategy that we can use in order to make sure that our commodities enter the markets and enter the markets in large quantities. I'm aware that I'm given 12 minutes, so I'll outline these impediments and the solutions that we suggest that will improve the market access. If you look at the markets, they occur at farm gate level, and also in our districts in Zambia, there are certain places which are designated as markets by the local councils. And then we see, apart from the domestic market, we see the regional markets, and we see the international markets. At every level, there are factors that impede the flow of commodities into these markets. There are some buyers who may not go to a district designated local market. They would rather go to the farm and buy the agricultural products at farm gate. So even there might be some impeding factors that may make the buyer fail to access the farmer, and thereby failing to access the commodity. And if the farm is not visible, then it means that the buyer will not be able to identify and recognize it. And consequently, he may not be able to reach that farm and get the commodity that he wants. Because of that, then you have, slowed trade flows. So to improve on this, the farmer has to make sure that the pathways leading to his farm, which the customers who walk, customers who ride bicycles, customers who drive, will access his farm, are cleared and maintained. Not only that, he must improve the the signage to his farm in terms of, you know, the signs, in terms of the labels, so that customers will be able to identify, oh, there is the farm and these are the commodities that are being handled there. If at that level the farmer can handle that, then we are able to see a number of buyers reaching his farm, reaching his commodity to buy more. The other aspect of impediment is there's a gap between the buyer and the farmer at that level. So there has to be improvements. There has to be improvements in internet infrastructure so that the gap between the buyer and the farmer at that level is narrowed. So there has to, this information asymmetry has to be resolved so that more information is created and more information is disseminated by the farmer to the buyer, and also the buyer to the potential provider. So that is a farm gate. The infrastructure leading to the farms in terms of pathways, in terms of roads, has to be improved, first of all, by the farmer. The signage has to be improved by the farmer, and also the local councils. So local councils identify the feeder roads that are leading to the productive areas, and also those areas which are leading to the markets, and those areas are worked on. I'm aware in Zambia we are having constituency development funds, which are given to local governments, to local councils. So if council has prioritized feeder roads that are leading to the productive areas and also to the markets, designated areas, then it simply means that there will be a lot of flows in terms of output from the farms. The other impediment area is the area of quantity and quality. In our local scenario here, we have seen that a number of farmers, they don't have enough output to place on the market. And because of that, you'll find today they are on the market, tomorrow they are not on the market. So that brings me to a point of there's low productivity in Zambia, way across the value chain. If you look at production in Zambia, researchers have recommended the output of 12 metric tons per hectare. But the current production in Zambia is, for maize, is 2 metric tons. If you look at the productivity levels in the US for maize, for example, maize, the farmers there net up to over 20 metric tons. What that simply tells you is that, you see, there are high production costs here in Zambia. The problem of that is that you will not be able to place your product on the market because the market has the competitive environment. So if we increase our productivity, say to 12, we'll be able to enter the market sustainably. So the issues of quantity, the issues of quality, the issues of productivity, if we have to maintain a share in the market, in the agriculture across the value chain, we need to look at capacity utilization of land, utilization of even transportation and the storage. The other impediment is in the area of wanting to make.
Okay.
Hello.
Oh, you're back. Okay. Please do continue. We lost you there. Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry. I was saying that I first of all looked at the impediments into the markets at farmer buyer level, at farm gate level. Then I looked at the problem of quantity, quality, and productivity. That the more we improve on productivity, we will have enough quantity that should be placed on the market sustainably. And the other thing is the quality aspect of it. Now, on the quality aspect of it, this draws me to a point of market standards, where the markets determine the standards which a farmer should be able to meet if he has to really offload the output to the market. According to the standards, the market will specify the measurement of each commodity. If, for example, the market says is 50 kg and a farmer puts 49.5, that is not a standard. If a farmer, for example, puts 49 or 45, that is not a standard. So for the Ministry of Agriculture, we are having extension officers who are collecting this market information, package it, take it to the production sites, and tell the farmer of what the market demands. So the issues of measurement, the issues of the color of the product, the issues of moisture content, the issues of level of pests and diseases, these are collected as standards portrayed or shown by the requirements on the market and disseminated to the farmers so that the farmers can meet these. Once the farmers meet these specifications on the market, then the quantity of output that is placed on the market will increase. In other words, the market access will increase. The other point is, which I was alluding to, is working in isolation as one of the impediments in terms of market access. A number of our farmers work in isolation and work alone. The problem of not belonging to associations like Zambia National Farmers Union, the Grain Traders Association of Zambia, the Millers Association of Zambia, create a problem when it comes to now placing your position, your product on the market to negotiate for better prices, to negotiate for financing from financial institutions. But when people come together as Zambia National Farmers Union, for example, the Grain Traders Association, the Millers Association, they can negotiate their way into the market, be it financial market, be it output market, be it input market. They will be able to do that. The other aspect is that that is at individual level, but at country level, we have seen countries getting initiatives like belonging to trading blocks or groups. In the case of Zambia, we have, as an LDC, we belong to least developed countries. We also belong to developing countries, trading bloc. We also belong to COMESA. We also belong to SADC. This gives us an advantage to negotiate when we are in these groups, especially when we want to export or we want to import to other, from and to other trading blocks where we don't belong. For example, we don't belong to East African Community or ECOWAS. So we will be able to negotiate because we are a grouping. But when we stand alone, then it becomes a problem in terms of increasing our volumes to these markets. The good thing of belonging to our groupings is that you are going to benefit from concessions, because Zambia is a signatory to a number of protocols. Now, there are specifications of benefits that are associated with belonging to the group. So if a country which represents the farmers belongs to this group, they will be able now to negotiate on behalf of their farmers for these benefits. And this is one other initiative that we need to do, or we are doing as a country. The other aspect is simplifying the procedures to import or export agricultural commodities. In the Ministry of Agriculture now, we have a situation whereby we are transferring the manual way of obtaining an import-export permit to the single window, where every facilitating agent, be it ZARI, be it us here, be it Minister of Health, be it ZRA, are on the platform of electronic platform where you can download an application, and then within a short time, people who are supposed to approve, they approve, and you get your export or import your product. So this way, we feel that the volumes which will be traded on these markets will be enhanced and increased. So this is, it simply means that the policies also have to be worked on. The policies, in many instances, hinder trade or market access. And this, if you have all these impediments on policy are removed, then you'll be able to see the increased trade flows. The other aspect is the reduction of tariff and non-tariff barriers. Nations have got, now at country level, we have a situation whereby people want to protect their own industries. And so they place tariffs and non-tariffs in place in order to regulate the flows of trade. But if we are talking about increasing trade, then we should be able to minimize these barriers. Not only trade tariffs, but even in the domestic market, we have seen that there are a lot of levies which are levied on crops. They call it the local governments. They call it crop levy. So so that councils can generate income. But now I realize that according to our system here in Zambia, every time when the budget is almost formulated, like now for the next year, government requested stakeholders to make their submissions where they feel taxes can be reduced. And I'm quite sure that is a chance for stakeholders in the agriculture sector to put in their submissions so that government can consider be able to lower certain taxes. It's a give and take. As we have agreed that tariffs increase the production costs and also reduces the chances of competing on the market. So once we negotiate and the tariffs or taxes are reduced, then we increase the chance of competing, because it means that our products will be cheaper compared to other competitors. The issues of SPS, countries use science to inhibit the movement of commodities. And but I know that in regional trade like COMESA, SADC, in ACP, in World Trade Organization, their committee is set to negotiate for these non-tariff barriers, so that people will be able to agree and allow trade to flow. The issue also, the last point I want to say that to increase trade flows, there's what we call in trade transparency, that we belong to these regional trade blocs. And whatever happens to our trade in terms of regulations, we should be able to notify the secretariat of these regional bodies, like COMESA, like SADC, like World Trade Organization, so that they'll be able to notify their members of the changes to trade in a particular country. So the more we do that, the more member countries will be able to adjust and respond to the requirements as stipulated by the national governments. But moderator, I would want to pause here and throw back the mantle to you, the moderator. Over to you, sir.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mtemwa. I think that was very important guidance, and I think looking at the challenge from a national perspective, and also looking at, I think, what would work. We are looking at improving market access for farmers. I think practical initiatives that work, and I think from the three presentations that we have had, there are quite a number of challenges that indeed require to be addressed. I will quickly go back to the questions that are coming in from Hova, and see if the participants could quickly respond to this. There are a few people that are still trying to find us on the live stream, but I would encourage people to still use the Hova app to ask your questions or make your comments. The questions that have come in, there are two questions that we need to answer. One is from Namanongo Shikapande, who is asking, are there any tips for agri startups that are entering the market and positioning themselves against big commercial entities that could squash them? So maybe let me also give you the second question so that we see if we could tackle them together. The second question is from NM, who is asking, is there a level playing field for access to markets? Of course, small players may have to access a segment of the market as opposed to going for the segment where big players are. But even when they do, how are we ensuring that they all have equal access and eventually win clientele based on their pitch and performance? So we can try to see if we could address those two questions. Maybe, we could start with Mr. Sprayton, and then we could go to Mr. Mwale, and then Mr. Mtemwa can come in last.
Right, thank you. There's two good questions there, and I think they are, in a sense, connected to each other. I think when we look at other markets, is there level playing field? I think the general regulations as put in place within the Zambian legislature actually creates quite a level playing field across the markets, where there's free access to all participants or all players into this market. I think one of the things as a starting point is we can look at the first question is saying, well, how do you take on a big company and not get squashed? I think the first of all is don't take them head on, and don't try and copy them. Look at the market and seeing where the opportunities are. Quite often big companies will leave parts of the market that they don't want to actually touch. It either costs them too much, or it's too much of a problem for them to actually access those areas of the market. So there's always areas that big companies won't actually get involved in. And when you're starting out, it's always good to look for those. You can quite often tailor what you're doing and target it to meet those specific needs of that client base that the big company is not wanting to do. Big companies look at costs and they say, well, it's too expensive or too difficult or too cumbersome or it's too far out of our delivery area to target that sector of the market. So the encouraging thing is when you start out and you're a bit smaller, those markets are good for you. You must go and take advantage of those areas that the big companies aren't doing. From there, once you've got market share, you understand the market and you've gained size, you can then have the ability to take on the bigger company. Also, where we look at level playing fields, generally the playing fields are level. It's just that the bigger players have been in it quite often longer and understand the market a bit more. So again, look at the opportunities around. Tailor your service to meet the specific demands of a smaller sector of the market and gain traction there. Once you've got that going and you've proved yourself, you're delivering a product that is the right quality at the right price and at the right service, you'll start seeing customers actually wanting your product, and slowly but surely you will push out some of the bigger players that are there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sprayton. Quickly, Mr. Mwale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mwewa, and for the two questions that have come through. So from my side, I definitely would like to agree with Mr. Sprayton over what he has mentioned, because that is very critical. And I would like to also just bring in another perspective that, first of all, you need to think about flexibility and agility and being agile. The first thing that you must remember is that because you are small, you are flexible and you are agile. You are able to make decisions faster, and also, without taking a lot of, so many days and meetings for you to be able to actually enact something. That is an advantage and a disadvantage. And I would like to actually ask you to use it in your advantage, in the sense that while some other people, for example, the response to COVID, others would be taking years, probably weeks and weeks to just decide on what is going to be their strategy going forward, you would have the ability to actually have moved and actually position yourself differently towards the customers. And that comes to the point that Mr. Sprayton mentioned, to say that the blind spots where the big guys wouldn't want to play in. Now, another thing that obviously you would want to take advantage of is what we call, going out for a niche market. Go out for a niche market. Figure out what products, what items, or what kind of business the big guys are not doing in agriculture, and then try to go for that space, and then probably be the best at that little thing, and you would find yourself that and start small. That is another interesting thing. So don't go out for the big thing, don't go out for the extravagant things. Go for a very simple solution, very simple product that only answers one particular thing. And with that, you'll be able to find yourself that two things may arise from my perspective. That is, if you do not fail, what will arise is that you may find that, number one, either you become the big player in that area, or what will happen is that the big organizations who you were actually, trying to avoid would realize that you're actually doing an amazing thing in that small area, and either they would like to buy you off, or they would like to also be able to maybe partner with you. So one of the things you need to look out for in business is, don't always think of other organizations as competitors. Sometimes also think about them as partnerships. Think about them as people who would want to collaborate with, people who have got things that you may have a synergy over, that you would want to do together, that together as a group, you'll be able to produce bigger results. Because remember, the continent is huge. Africa has got so many problems, and it needs so many people's efforts for us to be able to solve these problems. Therefore, we need as many hands as possible. And so if you can niche, remember you are flexible and agile, and quickly make sure that you are thinking about other people in forms of partnerships and collaboration more than competition. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mwale and Mr. Mtemwa. Mr. Mtemwa, are you able to hear me?
Thank you, sir.
Move away from your mic. Okay. Okay. Please go ahead,
The
sir.
network is a problem.
Okay. All right.
No,
all
thank
right.
you very
Please
much.
Go ahead.
So how do we give equal opportunity to the small scale farmer? That's a very important observation.
Yeah.
But it's very important that the earlier speakers have indicated as how do we supplement the efforts of the earlier speakers in order to provide an equal opportunity to the small scale farmer. Number one, government in the area of enabling environment, we provide the legal framework. If you look at the Control of Goods Act, it's very, very clear that every Zambian is free to export, every Zambian is free to import. And when you look at the mandate of the Minister of Agriculture, is that of, especially the agribusiness department, is to collect data on the market regarding the market information and forward it to the small scale farmers. In fact, we stand and exist for the sake of small scale farmers. So since they don't have much information, we collect that information, give it to them so that they can use it for their production that should be able to respond to the demands on the market. We think that with that kind of information, they can formulate commodities that will be able to compete with larger organizations. And the other aspect is that if you look at not only agriculture, if you look at commerce, they have got the acts that promote competition. And there are institutions like Competition Commission in place where they regulate the competition environment so that we don't encourage monopolies, so that the small scale farmers and small traders are not swallowed up. So the issues of collusion are dealt with within the acts of which commission or Minister of Commerce is administered. So it's, I think for us, we would want to make the small scale farmers and traders to be aware of this information that they can use in order to avail these opportunities that do exist in the environment. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mtemwa, thank you very much, Mr. Sprayton and Mr. Mwale. This has been a very engaging discussion. We are running out of time, and when it is getting better. However, let me just quickly just thank the speakers that were available to speak on this topic, which was on improving access to markets for farmers, practical initiatives that work. I think we've received a lot of input, and the presentations were actually very much lively. And so maybe as a way of summary, I would say I think certain things have come out from the presentations that would help farmers, bearing in mind I think what we have at hand and looking at what is it that can work for them. One of the things that we pick from the presentations as well as the responses that have come to the questions that were asked is that I think there's need for us to be able to embrace the issues of e-commerce. There's a place for e-commerce. I think looking at what is happening with the COVID-19, even post-COVID-19, we really need to embrace e-commerce and also look at how best do we use technologies in order for us to enhance trade as well as improve access to markets. The second thing that we do pick is that I think there's also a place for farmers to be able to come together and not work in isolation, but be able to work one with the other. And also I think use the intermediaries, the aggregators that would be able to help them put their crops, commodities together and also be able to have better bargaining power as they look for markets. Another aspect that I do pick is the place for partnerships. Both the SMEs, the small agribusinesses, as well as the larger agribusinesses, as well as government. There's need for us to engage into partnerships that would be able to support the smallholder farmers, improve accessibility to market. Another point that I pick from the discussion is that we also need to make sure that I think the policy environment favors access to markets. And then also, I think there was mention of the aspect of the market is not just domestic, but also international. And so there's need for us to be able to have the enabling environment that would be able to support the farmers to be able to market both within and outside, meaning that I think the levies and the tariffs that are charged to the farmer should be those that would be able to enable them have a better access to the markets. And also, I think an important aspect again that came from the discussion is that of, I think, farmers being able to embrace the integration of their production to look at what is it that the market wants, as opposed to having a monoculture kind of situation, but look at integration and look at what is the market looking for and be able to access it as such. So in summary, I would say that I think there is indeed a lot that we can do as a way of helping the farmers to be able to improve their access to markets by using structures that are both there locally and those that are at national level to be able to help them improve their accessibility to the markets. And so once again, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Mtemwa, Mr. Sprayton, and Mr. Mwale for being our speakers. At this point in time, before we close, I want to hand you back to our host, Champo, for her closing remarks. Champo?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this informative workshop. I would like to thank the speakers, Mr. Anayawa Mtemwa, Mr. Stephen Sprayton, Mr. Gilbert Mwale, and of course, our moderator, Mr. Jonathan Mwewa. I would urge all participants to kindly go on the agenda on Hoover and participate in the workshop evaluation polls. My name is Regina Champoengaenga, and I've been your host for this workshop, and I thank you once more. Bye.